Welcome to the Beth Yeshua podcast. For more episodes like this, sermons, and worship, visit bethyeshua.org.
They will come. Everlasting joy will crown their heads.
Praise God.
I was taking a walk, and I've been given to kind of taking these walks like at 5 in the morning, you know, because we still have a 13, almost 14-year-old in our house, Shannon Lee, and so so the Lord, you know, He kind of called me to start taking these walks along with the project, the Tour of Roses, and it wasn't something I had in mind. You know, it's nice when you get to bed and, you know, it's warm, and even in LA, you know, lately, well, not lately, but, you know, it got really cold, you know, got in the 30s overnight in LA, and that's really kind of, you know, really cold. So anyway, but, you know, He called me out to come walk with Him and to worship Him and to have my time out on the street. Not the safest neighborhood, but, you know, but He kept me. He keeps me. And he there He kind of meets me there. You know, I kind of pour out all my stuff to Him, and He kind of meets me there. So I was walking the other day, and He brought something rather unexpected to my mind, and I've been kind of turning it over, you know, a bit in my mind and thinking about it. And this morning as I was driving, which is like walking, only not as labor intensive, you know, although crossing the 37 was a bit hairy. There were some real interesting fog there. The Lord brought to mind this little snippet, this thing, you know. And then as Josh was leading the service, I heard the word again, and I was like, okay. So this is what we are doing today. Okay. And I'm not very good at this, you know. It's something that God works in all of us as we draw near to Him, as our affections move more toward Him and away from other things that we have invested in, you know. So I'm going to read to you out of Matthew, the NIV, non-inspired version.
I've never heard that.
I know.
Yes, well, you can use it. I give you permission.
Thank you.
I stole it from somebody else.
I
So
will use it.
yes, okay. So anyway, it says in verse 22 of chapter 14, immediately Jesus, Yeshua, made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of Him to the other side while He dismissed the crowd. After He had dismissed them, He went up on a mountainside by Himself to pray. Later that night He was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by waves because the wind was against it. And, you know, I'm just going to take my liberty to comment on some of this. Being Jewish, you know, it's kind of hard not to comment. So the boat is there, and it's buffeted by the waves, and the disciples, of course, are freaking out because that's what they do best. They freak out, you know. How many times in the Gospels do the disciples freak out?
All the time.
Probably quite a bit, you know, and more than that's recorded here, okay? So they're freaking out, you know? I can appreciate that. I really relate to that because when God starts speaking to me in my life, I freak out. That's my first reaction. He knows me, He understands me, he wired me, and so it doesn't surprise Him, you know? But at some point, you know, I need to get through the freaking out and respond to Him. So shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw Him walking on the lake, they were, of course, terrified. Doesn't say, of course, but they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. And, of course, more freaking out took place, But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." And now, Peter does this really weird thing. Okay, if you're in the middle of freaking out, you're just trying to survive, right? But Peter does this other thing. I think to myself, he's looking at Jesus walking on the water, and something rises up greater than fear. Fascination. Fascination. How is he doing that? How can that be possible? No one can do that, And yet, Jesus has identified himself, and he's walking on the water. So Peter says, "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me," and in some versions it says, "command me," "to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. And that's important too. He cries out, "Lord, save me." And the word there is immediately. Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. And then, "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." And I want to say to you, there's a couple of things there. Jesus asks, hi. Peter says, "Lord, if it is you." He doesn't go, "Wow, I want to do that. I think I'll step out of the boat." Not a good idea. A friend of mine some years ago says, you don't want to be presumptuous.
Amen.
You don't want to assume that because you see something means that you're being invited. Okay? So Peter does actually a very wise thing. He says, "If it's you." You could say that that's a matter of faith, but he's checking to make sure. He says, "If it's you, Lord, tell me to come to you." In other words, I can't do this. I recognize that the laws of nature are against this, and I can't do this in my own strength, so I need your telling me to come. Because if you tell me to come, I will be able to come. You will, in fact, enable me. And in that one word, I believe that Jesus gives him the authority, the anointing, the equipping, whatever it is, that enables him to walk out on the water, okay? Not everybody could have done that. But Peter, in the midst of freaking out, looks at Jesus, and he wants to, he's drawn. And I think that's the Holy Spirit working in the wiring of Peter, And so he gets out of the boat, and he does this incredible thing under the authority of Yeshua. Under the authority and in the equipping and the anointing of Yeshua. And even when he takes his eyes off, Yeshua is right there to pull him out. And what I want to talk about is when the Lord says, "Come to us." In the midst of our freaking out, in the midst of our, disqualifying ourselves and wigging out, whatever we're doing, and he says, "Come." And we go, please tell me it's you. Tell me it's you. And he's told us, and we know, and he says, "Come." Has the world disappointed you? All your hopes and dreams fallen through? I'm calling you. Come and follow me. Though your heart has cried endlessly, lay your net aside, leave the sea. Now you're free to come and follow me. I promise you sunshine to guide you through best colors every time it rains. There's a rocky road up ahead. Drop your load and I'll be your bed. I'll cover you and others who follow me. Break my bread tonight when you sup. Drink the wine and I'll fill you up. Take from my cup the strength you need to follow me. I promise you sunshine to guide you through the pain. You'll see my best colors every time it rains. Though your heart is crying endlessly, lay your net aside, leave the sea. Now you're free to come and follow me.
And
You know, I think that all my life, he's calling me to come, to come out from the wounding in my face and in my heart, as a child, to come out from, all my protective devices and defenses, to come out from atheism and, my questions and doubting of God, to come to him. And I think the whole journey in our lives, no matter whether we're leading tremendous missions all over the world or have great ministries, or we're unseen, hidden away in corners, speaking the word of God to people who will never be seen or heard or understood, but that God has sent us there to love, that the journey is always him calling us to himself through all of it, not calling us to people, but to himself.
Yeah.
And the people are the overflow as he calls us more deeply and intimately to himself. This is always the call. This is always and continuing on the call from the beginning when he calls us until the end when we close our eyes, which is just the beginning of when we wake up and be in his presence forever and ever.
Amen.
And so he's calling our hearts to be with him. And will we respond, or do we, are we too busy freaking out? Peter was able to see Jesus doing this impossible thing, and he could not help but be drawn to that, And it was in itself an invitation, but Peter didn't presume. Sometimes we presume, and sometimes we're freaking out, And the whole business is, Lord, if it's really you. As Josh was saying, we began this project, A Tour of Roses, and it was something that the Lord said, come to me, well, come to me out of my nice, I kind of had a little niche going, hey, we have a music ministry and we have a bunch of CDs and, and all these invitations, well, maybe not so many invitations, but, we can go in different places and minister and the songs, touch people and everything. And then one day God started speaking to me about something that was just like, you don't talk to me about that. You can't be talking to me about that. What about that? And it's like, prejudice? I am not prejudiced. I am not prejudiced. I am prejudiced. Prejudice, judgmental. And he began to expose my heart, my heart that had drunk in the culture of what it is to be a Jew. What it is to be a Jew is to have some part of uncertain, ambiguous negativity toward Germany, where they tried to kill all of us. Part of my upbringing is to understand that may happen again in Germany. And certainly, all the rhetoric in the press and in the Jewish community is, well, maybe it's happening now. Maybe maybe Islam is bringing that even more to the front, and it's like, oh, okay, so what do I do? Well, the answer's pretty obvious. He called us by his love, and he calls us to come where he leads, and he calls us to be love and light in a place where it's dark and death, and he calls us not to walk in prejudice or judgment or fear, which is so much the base root of these things.
Amen.
Fear. But God has called us to be a people peculiar to him, to walk in the light and the power of his love. In places where people cannot even conceive of that. And so what do? We began giving out roses in Dachau. In Germany, Dachau was considered, instead of saying, like in America, we say, why don't you go to the Netherlands down here, the bad place, Instead, in Germany, they would say, why don't you go to Dachau? So Dachau, if it was an equation, equals Sheol, Hades, you know what I'm saying here? So we went to Dachau, beautiful, beautiful Bavarian town, established in 800 AD. But who cares? Who knows that? Everybody goes to see the camp. But we went, me and Evs. You were on that. No, you weren't on that. You were in Nuremberg. Sorry. But we went to give out roses in the streets of this town to the people who inhabit this town that is referred to as Hades, that is used as a cuss word, as a negative, as a whatever. We went to go show the love and the grace of the God whose love cannot be measured by height or depth or breadth, that we want to contain it, we want to handle it, we want to grasp it, and all we can do is receive it.
Amen.
And it's so hard for us even to receive it. And I don't say that lightly because, he's still working on me, man. He's putting me through the meat grinder here. So, to receive the love that he has for us, that we would be transformed. And here's the thing. Well, you receive the love so that you can give the love. That's so basic theology. You receive it so you can give it. No. You receive it because he loves you. Period. End of sentence. End of thought. End of idea. And you know what? You can't receive it enough. And as you receive it, guess what happens? You are changed in the process of receiving that love. And you know what happens? It starts leaking out of you. You don't even know what's going on. It's not you receive the love so that you can give it over here because you're called. The calling comes in the love. It doesn't come out of duty. It doesn't come as a burden. It doesn't come as proving your worth in the eyes of God, who already bought and paid for you through the blood of Yeshua.
Amen.
It comes through his love.
Amen.
Through this intimate relationship of him who knows you so profoundly, how you're wired and when you're going to freak out and when you're going to look, and when he's going to speak, that it's like, it's okay. It's okay. He's got you. And even if you fall in the waves, he's got you. Immediately, he's got you.
Hallelujah.
And all of that just multiplies the love, which multiplies the pouring out. Because your whole life becomes a beacon, an unveiled face. Someone was praying for the ministry that we're going to bring to Israel as God leads and guides us. And they were praying, how when Moses went up to, the mountain and received the law, he was radiant. He was so radiant. After 40 days, he had to put a veil over his face because, I don't know, maybe it was scary, or they say that the glory was fading away, whatever. I don't really completely understand why he had to put a veil over his face. But the person who was praying for that. He was praying for the veil, and I said, no, man, don't be praying for any veils. Unveiled faces, because it's going to have to be more than words and flowers that speak here. Because we, in fact, are the roses. The 17 of us on this team are the roses. Some of us are Jews. Some of us are Palestinians. The guy who's pastoring the men on this team, he's German and he was born in Dachau. How poetic is that? There are Polish people on this team. There's a Native American guy with his Puerto Rican wife, God calls the nations to go up to Jerusalem.
Amen.
And he calls us to be one. And it doesn't happen because we nice with each other. See? Play nice. When I was growing up as a kid, my Aunt Frances, she kept kosher. She would say, now make nice with your father, who I never made nice with at the time. She said, make nice, because we'd be arguing. We'd be in one of our 2, 3, 4 hour arguments. And my aunt would say, make nice. And it's like, I'll never not make nice, whatever nice is, I tell you that the kingdom of God is not about nice. The kingdom of God is about a powerful, ferocious, fierce love of God that is incredibly tender and overwhelmingly passionate for you. Not for what you're going to do, for you. End of sentence, end of thought. That's how we change. We drink that cup. We begin to drink that cup. We begin to drink that cup to the dregs. And we are changed as we drink that cup. And then we encounter people and we touch them and we don't even know that we're touching them because we're so in love with the one who touched us.
Hallelujah.
And we become his hands and we become his feet. Just like that. This is an old song. We wrote it a long time ago for my father. And I put some of those CDs of this song out there, on the table. And I think of my father a lot these days, because I grew up in a flower shop. What do you want, And I learned how to clean roses. And, Kalita and Sheila are going to learn how to clean roses. And they're going to learn how to clean roses from one of the best. Have you learned how to clean roses? So, I grew up in a flower shop and I cleaned the roses because it was a way of being close to my father. But my father didn't know how to be close to us and he didn't know how to love us. And I hated him for that, as I have shared many times. And I remember, I worked in different flower shops in Boston and New York as I went in and out of college. And I could always get a job in a flower shop, ironically. And I hated the flower shop. I was like, I never want to wind up in a flower shop, God. I don't want to do this. And, for years I didn't have to touch the flower shop. We had this music ministry, and everything was going, fairly smoothly. And all of a sudden this project, all of a sudden this dream of roses. And I thought, how ironic. Not right away, mind you, because, it takes a while to, catch up to you and you go, I'm cleaning roses. How'd this happen? I'm cleaning roses in Berlin. What's that about? Nothing in our lives is wasted when God has a hold of our lives. But my father, when I was growing up, he was a man who was at times consumed by rage. And rage was a monster in our house. And sometimes my father, that's how he appeared to us, as a monster. I remember when he would stay home on Sundays, he would work every other day of the week, and my mom would go to the shop on Sundays, and take care of it. But my father would stay home, and he would stay home, and inevitably we would have this moment where my father totally lost it at my brother and me, and he would become the monster. And he would hurt us. And I hated him. I hated him for it. And when I came to faith, one of the first lessons in coming to faith that the Lord showed me was forgiveness. And I didn't grow up with forgiveness. In my family it was, I don't talk to her because 30 years ago she did this. I'm serious. I'm not making a joke. My mom held a grudge with her best friend, who she loved dearly, who had the same name as her, for the last 20 years or so of her life, because she brought a gift over when she wasn't supposed to. And we're very strange people sometimes, So the Lord had to teach me about forgiveness, and part of it was being able to see, as I like to think of it now, the man and the monster. Think about that. The man and the monster. That's who Yeshua died for. The man trapped in the monster. And when I saw that, when I understood that, even though I didn't have these words for that, I was able to love my father. I was able to see him as a human being again. And then when I saw him as a human being, right, because I love the Lord, right, then it mattered that he would be at the table. Not just because how many souls can get saved today, but it was because it's my father and I love him and I want to see him at the table. It wasn't something I had to do. It was something I wanted to do because I loved him, because love was the driver. Love was the driver. And my father did come to the Lord when he was 82. But before he even came to the Lord, we became friends, and this song got written because I wanted to see him at the table at the end of time. And I want to say to you, this is the crux, in a sense, of a Tour of Roses. How do you see the people who have damaged you, who have hurt you, who have wounded you, who have insulted you, who have whatever they've done? How do you see the people on the political scene? Are they villains? Are they monsters? Because I tell you that the whole business of us as a people who are called to be the priests, the people who are called as a royal priesthood by God, is to see with his eyes. And he sees people. He sees people who he wants to reach out and touch through our reluctant hands and our judgmental hearts. And we need to be changed. God forgive us. We need to be changed. That's why I sing this song today. The chorus of the song says, I just want to see you there. I can't tell you how much I wanted to see my father, who I hated. That was like a miracle. I just wanted to see my father there. Please don't ask me not to care. Don't cop out. Don't ask me not to care. You can't control that. I don't want to sit at his table next to an empty chair. And it's not like we will sit at that table that way, but that's our hearts right now. I just really want to see you there. So I invite you, as I'm singing this, maybe there's some monster in your life and you've forgotten how to see them as the man, as the human being that God created. He created us all out of his love. He created the villains in this world out of his love. We were the villains. We were all villains. You understand? We were all banished from the presence of God. And he gave his son to reconcile us. So teach us how to see with your eyes, Lord God, and to love with your heart. know that you don't really think I'm blind or crazy, though sometimes I believe that I must be. What kind of lunatic throws out all reason and gives her life to someone she can't see? I wish I had more faith so I could just let go, or show that composure to pretend. But I think the time is short, and yes, I'm scared. I need to know we'll meet again. I just want to see you there. Please don't ask me not to care. I don't want to sit at his table next to an empty chair. I just really want to see you there. So in a quiet moment, won't you ask him if he is real? Then reach out and touch his face. I just want to see you there. Please don't ask me not to care. I don't want to sit at his table next to an empty chair. I just really want to see you there. I just really want to see you there. It has to begin with us responding to that come. I heard the Lord saying, come, when I wanted to be angry at my father in that first year of faith. I heard him say, come. You know, I mean, I'm not saying the words that I heard that way, but it was an invitation to look at my father as a human being. It was a come. Come out on this water. You know, see the monster as a man. You know, as impossible as walking on the waves to me in my heart. And I said yes, and I came. And every time we come, when he speaks, our hearts are changed and our hearts are opened, and we trust him more and we love him more. And then that love spreads, because we become roses wherever we are. We become that sweet fragrance of Mashiach wherever we go, whatever we do. You know, I was taught by my father, you know, never to respond to homeless people, because after all, they were only going to go out and spend it on dope or wine or, you know, and they were lying anyway. They were all liars, and they were all cons. That was my father's point of view, and it was wounded It was a wounded point of view, my father. And the Lord had to teach me. He had to say, this one, I want you to, this one, right now. You, go to it. Is to come. And it's like, well, God, if I give that person money, what are they going to do with the money? You know? It's like, it doesn't matter. It's not your business. You go and minister to that person. You go, speak to them, and give them the money, and say that this is because God loves you. You know, you go buy this one diapers, because their baby needs diapers. I'm like, God, you know, we're not rich here. Hey, you know. I was like, you know, sometimes, hey, we're on food stamps. Hey. And God say, go give that one your last buck. And it's like, what are they going to do with it? That's none of your business, you know. And sometimes, you know, God would put it in my heart. Well, I could ask him, so what do you want the money for? Well, I want to buy something to eat, said the woman who was like 400 pounds stuck in a wheelchair, you know, and standing out, you know, sitting outside the 7-Eleven. She wants to go buy something to eat. Well, maybe I'm doing her a favor, not getting her money, you know, to go buy something to eat. I looked at her, you know, and the Lord was like, and I went in and I got her coffee and I got her a roll, and I went out to give her the coffee and the roll, and I said to her, you know, I'm not really good at this, but I think that God wants to tell you today that he loves you. And I asked what her name was. Her name was Lucy, right? Her name was Lucy. And she started shaking a little bit. She says, when my hand shakes, I know that God is here. He's here. And I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. Well, you know, what are we doing? You know? And so, you know, she goes, I know he's here. You know, I'm supposed to go back to church. And I'm like, okay. And so, you know, I ended up praying for Lucy. We had this moment that God used. And I thought, praise the Lord, you know. And I came back to 7-Eleven the next day, and she was there again. And here's the deal. It doesn't matter. It's not my business. I thought, well, you know, so that was for nothing. And I was like, no. I'm responding to the come. And every time I respond to the come, he's doing something in my life. And he's doing something in other people's lives. And what he's sowing in those people's lives is his business. And what he's sowing in my life is, you know, and it's just exactly what Jesus says to Peter. You know, when he comes up after Jesus, you know, and he looks behind him and he goes, what's gonna happen to that guy, you know, to John? And it's like, that's none of your business. That's not what I called you for, you know. I called you to follow me. So I just want to tell you in the last few minutes, you know. And when the Lord began to say, come to me on this particular project, I went, whoa, and I kind of freaked out, you know, because the first thing I heard was Palestine, which is not politically correct. Palestine. How could God be saying to me, I'm Jewish, hey, Lord, you know, hey, what are we talking about here, you know? I was like, how could you be saying to me Palestine, right? Because we understand that this can't be right. You're saying this to me. And I'm like, don't you mean like Israel? You're talking about Israel, you know? And then he said to me, the next thing he said to me was, you know, because my dialogue with God is, if it's really you, tell me, come out. Tell me to come to you, and I will come to you, but I really need to know it to you. And if it's like that, I really, 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 really need to know this is you, right? You know? And so the next thing I hear is, these are my people, and I have not forgotten them. You know, these are also included, not exclusive. Also my people, and I have not forgotten them. And I'm like, wow, that's not me. That's not my thinking. I'm not thinking there. You know, okay. Okay, that's, you know. So then I went to my associate pastor at our congregation, and I said, hey, could you pray for me? Because I think maybe God is doing this and this. And I told him, and he said, oh, well, let me pray that you hear God. And I think I'm hearing him. I don't know. I think I'm hearing him. So he starts praying for me. And as he's praying for me, I couldn't even tell you what he's praying, but I hear the Lord say in my spirit, he goes, and they love not their lives. And okay, that passage in Revelation, it's about martyrdom, right? But I'll tell you what, the Lord was speaking to my heart about not loving our lives, our comfort so much, our nice little niche, our way of understanding things, our politics, our whatever, not loving our lives so much that we won't walk out on that water with him. That we won't go where he calls because we love him more. We love him more than our lives, see? That's the kid. We love him more than our lives. And the world goes, you are crazy. Lost it now. And so I told my associate pastor, I said, guess what I heard while you were talking? While you're praying, And I can't tell you, all the ways that God spoke to my heart and helped me know that this is what he wants us to do in the middle of all the tension and the murders and the slayings and everything else. I'm not blind, I'm not deaf, I'm not dumb, But I've seen what God can do with a rose. I've seen what God can do when people put their hearts out before him and he breathes, and he shows his glory. I can see that we can walk on water and he can move mountains because it's his will to do so. And when we don't presume and we trust him and we make sure it's him, man, he does some amazing things. Despite all our weaknesses and all our freaking outs, So pray for us. We're going to give out 7,000 long-stem red roses in Bethlehem, Jerusalem, and the Lord willing in the Palestinian refugee camp of Dahisha. Pray that we will shine with the glory of God. Pray that we will be one, that he will make all of our wild and wounded and sometimes reckless hearts at times, that he will knit us together as one, to express his glory and his beauty and his love in this place, in this barren, barren place, that we can express his love in this place. Pray for us, please. Yes. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord bless and keep you honey and make his face to shine upon yours and mine. The Lord turn his eyes on you and be gracious to us both and grant his peace to all who call on him, and grant his peace to all who call on him.
Thank you for listening. Visit bethyeshua.org for more.